Hi there, welcome to a new focus within the Noah Presgrove case, which will be of your interest, so make sure to stick around till the end of this video. Today I've got a new map project which I created, which is focusing in on a specific timeline of Caden Pressey, post-news of Noah Presgrove's death, and tying in Renee Millan, the mother, to Jasmine, Jade, Stephanie Millan, etc. Because whilst we've looked at it briefly when Caden did his interview, we need to look at it visually and directly from the horse's mouth, such as Renee Millan, to see if it matches up with what Caden was getting at. Jade has spoken in the background too, and maybe there's a few contradictions, which wouldn't be a surprise. But that's what we're going to be looking at today. It's quite a deep focus. It's around the general theme of cleaning up. Was it done to protect someone within the case? Was there any areas where the blame or responsibility was pinned onto someone else, like Caden Pressey? More about that later. Be sure to stick around. I just want to say welcome to those that are watching this live premiere right now. Be sure to engage with the live chat on the right hand side of the screen. And by the end of this video, and for those watching on catch up, let me know your thoughts down below in the comments section. It'll be interesting to see. You'll also find a pinned comment by myself with additional links if you do want to support this channel. And if you want to catch up on recent coverage by me on this case, top right corner of the screen where the eye symbol is, click up there. You'll find the full playlist, and you'll also find the video from last night, because I did 2 videos last night, both very important. You don't want to miss out. So without further ado, what we're going to get into first is what Renee Millan had to say originally, and then possibly compare it with what Jade said, and then we apply it visually and go beyond. So what you're looking at on screen is by the Renee Millan on Facebook, posted April 29th, I guess 2024. This appears to be a public post, taking consideration that there was a repost of it on Reddit, but ever since it's been deleted or it's disappeared, which is very strange, but luckily I just so happen to have the screenshot of it on the next slide. But let's just see what Renee had to say in regards to the events that unfolded on the day of Noah's death. Renee states, "I have no clue where people get their information from." Facepalm. "No, I didn't clean up anything at the house. When I arrived at almost 7 in the morning, actually, when I pulled up and things were being picked up, I told them, those that were present, it's pointless. The cops will know this was a party. After talking to a few of them, I told them that they would be the first ones investigated because they were the last ones to see him alive. Secondly, talk of me removing firearms is being made into something it's not. The kids that were leaving said they had a few guns in their vehicles. Don't know what kind because I'm not a gun person, but all I know is big ones, so I put them in my vehicle to take where they belong. Guns were never thought to be the cause of death at the time or any time thereafter." Well, that's debatable. "I never told anyone to leave the house. The house was never cleaned with anything at all because to my knowledge the house wasn't cleaned for weeks to make sure law enforcement didn't need to come back for anything. Well, did they even arrive to begin with? That's questionable. Homeowner's decision, not mine." Is that so? "The time Jasmine Millan called me would have had to have been between 5:45 a.m. to 6 in the morning. Takes me about 40 to 45 minutes to get to Terrell or Terral." Very interesting. And, you know, we can analyse it bit by bit, some of which can be applied onto the map. But what did the daughter Jade have to say? This was actually from Reddit originally. On the right is basically what we read out before. On the left is where Jade gives her story of things. Take in mind, Jade wasn't a party goer, nor there at the time, from the looks of it. Jade says, "Saw him, very swollen, I'm guessing that might be in response to Noah Presgrove's body, maybe? I'm not too sure. Very sad. If my sister was guilty, I know damn well she'd speak up, even if it was an accident. She has nothing to hide at all. Obviously, Noah is the victim here, question. He's gone, question. I think it's obvious, isn't it? That's the obvious. If it was my phone, where I could tell you what time they called, I'd answer that for you. If you have any questions, ask my mother, Renee Millan, or sister yourself. Yet you haven't tried to ask anything of them. Let me make it clear for you. Since you didn't understand it, in capital letters, I didn't call my mother, so I did not know the time of any calls. From what I can remember, which pregnant at the time, so pregnancy brain, my mother called me around 9 in the morning, telling me Noah was gone and saying she was headed out to Jasmine, which I just looked, and 9 a.m. is the correct time, so I'm not sure where you're getting the story of my mom getting there at 5:30 in the morning. Well, that's all very interesting. Now, I personally haven't heard of the 5:30 a.m. timestamp of Renee Millan making it down there, but it was Caden Pressey himself, a witness at the party house, that said Renee Millan got there at the house around 6:30 in the morning. Renee Millan states I arrived at 7, which there's a 30-minute time difference, but she did say around 7 or close to, so let's just double check. Whereabout is it? Which I arrived at almost 7 in the morning. So just before 7, Renee got there. But still, a 30-minute time difference wouldn't be classified as almost 7 in the morning. So times appear to be changing here and there. But the bit that was highlighted originally on the Reddit page that Renee Millan called Jade Millan at 9 in the morning, well, that's obviously much later on, but that's just about the news of Noah. But to say that, and she was heading out to Jasmine's at the time of 9 in the morning onwards, upon telling Jade, yeah, okay, I get it. It seems a bit weird. There's a massive difference between 7 in the morning when Renee Millan claims to be at the party house, and then Jade stating that Renee called her at around 9 in the morning, announcing the news of Noah's death and also announcing that she was heading down to the party house. That's hours apart. Now, would you say in defense of Jade claiming that being pregnant at the time, pregnancy brain, not quite thinking clearly, memory issues, maybe there's a fair chance at that. I think at the end of the day, because we've got Caden Pressey as middle ground, you could probably put aside Jade's comment here and bridge the gap closer between Renee Millan and what Caden has said. Renee says close to 7, Caden says at 6:30. Caden Pressey does mention the 7 a.m. timestamp, but that's to do with another important situation, and we'll get to that shortly. But was there anything that stood out here to you as a viewer watching? Anything comes across as suspicious? Well, let's break it down bit by bit. I didn't clean up anything at the house. When arriving, other people were, and I told them it's not worth it because the police would know there's been a party anyway. I mean, is that true? Things were being picked up? Yeah, well, Caden Pressey said he had the idea to pick up the beer cans and stuff like that, clear it up. Now here by Renee Millan, it does not mention anything about being told to get the cooler or get the alcohol and take it back in the possession of Caden Pressey, but that came about elsewhere within the community being talked about. So I don't know why it's not mentioned here unless it was added on by Renee Millan at a later point, unless it's just complete BS and it doesn't apply. But nevertheless, even if Renee Millan claims she didn't clean anything up, removing guns, is that even a good idea? Because that's what we really need to focus on the most, don't we? Talking of removing guns being made into something it's not. The kids that were leaving the party said they had a few guns in their vehicles. So why would Renee Millan have to collect those guns from the kids' vehicles in which the kids that are talking are actually present there, who are in the process of leaving? How else are they supposed to leave? If you've arrived with your own vehicle and then you're going to leave afterwards, you're going to leave in your own vehicle, the one what you arrived in the first place. And if that's the vehicle which has the firearm or firearms in, then there is no reason for Renee Millan to go and collect those guns, take them out, and then hand them over to who? Maybe Caleb Newton, for them to return back to the rightful owners, even though the rightful owners were in possession of them at the time and at the party too. It makes absolutely no sense. Now, if we're talking about there were party goers that were no longer at the party Monday morning onwards because they left early, they got a lift back, and that their guns were left in the house laying about, I can understand collecting them up, rounding them up, and then taking them back to the owners to make it easier for everyone else, and to just move the guns away in case, police start questioning for certain reasons, right? Okay, Renee Millan says that there's to do with the guns, it's not thought to be the cause of death at the time or any time thereafter. But how do you know, Renee? Oh, we're talking about the obvious of a firearm being shot. There are no bullet holes on Noah. Never has been, never will. Okay, understandable. But firearms can be used in other ways as melee weapons. You can get pistol whipped. You can get whacked on the head with the stock, the butt of a rifle, a gun. The hard wood, the stock, or hard metal, plastic, it's enough to knock someone out, if not do more damage if done repeatedly. And due to the shape of the torn scalp on Noah's head, as it's ripped back, they said almost like a fish-like shape, and certain rifle stocks, the butts of them are kind of shaped like a fish, a bit oval as well. So could that have led to some of the injuries on Noah? Who knows? But if that really was the case, then a firearm which may or may not have been used would have had to have been cleaned down or maybe taken away. Now, in the moment if a firearm was used, you could ask yourself, well, why only a firearm stock? Why not actually being shot? But then it would probably be too obvious and create too much noise, wouldn't it? Especially at the party. Even if Caden Pressey was asleep, if there was a gunshot, it might have woken him up and thought, what the hell was that? So sometimes you do it in stealthy ways to keep a low profile. That's a possibility here at least. But to refer back to where it says the time Jasmine Millan called at 5:45 to 6 in the morning, how significant is that? I guess it kind of ties in line with Caden Pressey's timeline, but we'll probably need to take a closer look at it, as I said. So there's some contradictions there, extreme ones in terms of time difference, where you see it on the left highlighted in yellow and then on the right highlighted in that little blue box. We do have, inside footage of the party house, not so much directly to the exact party, but there's a fair chance that it could be the same one because of the tree in the background. But you think about walking about the place inside, cleaning up, in Caden's point of view too, and then some other things that went on after that, well, we need to look at it closer, so let's head on over to the maps right now. Well, here we are. You can see there are some new timestamps added on in, and it's been arranged appropriately, so we haven't got all the other convoluted stuff. This is mainly from Caden Pressey's timeline, what we heard from the True Crime, or Partners in True Crime podcast, and then the specific markers highlighted in purple is from what Renee Millan or Jade Millan states. What I just want to acknowledge before we go any further, and it is very important, so make sure to listen in. This part of the video has been recorded the day after. It was supposed to be done yesterday, but when I got to the map section, the screen recorder glitched the F out at the very end. So I wasted 1 hour, 15 minutes creating a masterpiece for it to be lost, just like that. So it's very annoying. It's going to be difficult to try and remember everything that I said yesterday, so there might be some missing pieces, but there's not much I can do about it. So let's just work with what we've got right here. we should probably focus in at the scene of the highway because it still involves Renee Millan, the mother, her whereabouts at what times, and it might not match up with Caden's timeline. It could be implied that what Caden says, everything's been brought back by an hour or so, and what Renee Millan states, or what Stevie Howard states, or what Jack Newton states at times when it suits him, is an hour ahead at 6 in the morning onwards. It's a bit of a debacle, but it is what it is. So, just so you're familiar with these, I've labelled it out like that just so it's a bit easier and spread out. I do have the screen flipped at the moment, but it will be clearer when I unflip it, right? It's in a specific order. So, Renee Millan arrives 6:30 in the morning Monday at the party house. Who's at the party house at the time? Caden Pressey, because he was a witness to it all happening. Brylan Sweat, Mikey, Isaac Rojas. Then you had, I'm guessing, Stephanie Millan, even though her name's never mentioned, which is very weird. Jasmine Millan, Avery Carter Combs, and Logan Jernigan. Logan, Avery Carter, all living at that house at the time. I don't know about now, because some key individuals in the background say that they still live there, and then some other strangers online say that they don't. Who knows? That's a mess itself. But over this way, Renee Millan herself on Facebook stated she arrived at 7 in the morning. That obviously conflicts with Caden Pressey's. Now, Renee Millan can say close to or near to 7 in the morning, which can imply just before 7, 6:50, 6:55. There is still a time difference, like a 30, 25-minute time difference between what Caden says and what Renee Millan says. What the hell's going on there? One person's right, the other person's wrong. And as for Jade Millan, who was pregnant at the time, claiming that their memory could be a bit messed up and foggy because of pregnancy. I'm not an expert there. I'm not going to be pregnant, so I wouldn't know. But nevertheless, Jade was getting at, it was like 9 in the morning onwards when I was told by the mother, Renee Millan, about the death of Noah, but also that she was on the way down to the party house at 9 in the morning, and yet Renee is saying 7 in the morning. That's hours apart. What the hell is going on there? But as for Jasmine Millan, which was stated by Renee, Jasmine, party goer, we've all heard of them before, called Renee, the mother, at 5:45 to 6 in the morning. Now, would that justify the time of being told at 6 in the morning, then taking 1 hour down from where she lives, which I believe is Ryan at some point, because it's mentioned publicly on Facebook, to my memory? For Renee Millan to come down from Ryan, coming down south, as if you were going towards Terrell, but you actually turn off long before that onto the right, which is down to the party house property, and it's all done and there by 7 in the morning. Well, Renee Millan said that the total journey is about 40 to 45 minutes long. And if you were told at 6 in the morning and it took 40 to 45 minutes to get down to the place, you probably could arrive at 7 in the morning. But Caden's saying it's 6:30. The reason why 7 a.m. is still important, whether Renee Millan is right or wrong, is because Caden said 7 in the morning is the time that they actually left the house, all of them, except for the ones that lived there at the time. I have jumped ahead, but I just wanted to give you the contrast between it and the importance behind it. So if we work our way back to the scene, because Caden said himself, he was told by Renee that when she was coming on down to the party house after being told by Jasmine as to what's happened, you can understand why Renee would be coming on down to see what's happening, to check in on her daughters, seek comfort, make sure that they're okay. Very normal. Could apply the same with Caleb Newton, Jack Newton's father, coming down to the scene where Jack was at. But I think that was later on. I don't know the exact time, but I do know, or at least it has been mentioned many times, that it was 6 in the morning onwards. At around 6:05 a.m. is when Jack Newton called his father to announce all the news. But in terms of the party goers, the ones at the party house, they were supposedly told at 5:15 in the morning by Jack Newton. So, a few hours passing on by and F all being done about it. As for Renee Millan, What time did she get to the scene? If it was 6:30 by the time she made it to the party house, based off what Caden says. And we're going to focus more so on Caden's timeline today because it makes a little bit more sense and it has been a bit more consistent. And some people could say, well, Renee Millan is correct. Yeah, but you know what doesn't help? Renee says she got to the house at 7 in the morning and Jade is saying she was just leaving to go down to the house at 9 in the morning. You can't trust it. It's not good enough. So, what would have been the journey? Well, at least from what I'm aware of and what it says publicly before anyone gets petty or whines, Ryan, Oklahoma, roughly, at the time at least, where Renee Millan lives or lived, making it down the highway to head down there, which you see highlighted in the red marker. And we can measure the distance in just a second, okay? Measure it up to the highway, so roughly the area where Noah's body was found. So if I just pull out the measuring thing just there, I probably should do it from down here so then we can extend it if needed. So roughly put it there, because I just want to see, does it really take 40 to 45 minutes as stated by Renee in the first place, or is that exaggerated? Is it incorrect? Okay, it might not be the most accurate, but we're just being time efficient. So let's just round it up, 6.40 miles. Does it take 40 to 45 minutes to cover 6.40 miles? I don't think so. I think it's a load of bollocks, don't you? 6.40 miles in 45 minutes. Maybe I'm not an expert with vehicles, transport, but I don't know. It just seems like it takes way too long to do all that. But this is the thing. Renee Millan herself never mentioned anything about being at the scene of the highway, at least from that Facebook post that we saw. But Caden Pressey stated that's what happened. But Caden Pressey is basing it off from what Renee told him at the time when she got to the house. So it might have only been a 6.40 mile journey down to the highway and then add on the rest to get down to the party house, which is like an extra mile or so, roughly speaking, which rounds it up to about 7.61 miles. That's probably not going to take 40 to 45 minutes. But if you're going to spend 30 minutes at the highway, yeah, time is going to add up. I'm not an expert. 10, 15 minutes to cover 15 minutes to cover 6.40 miles or something, and then add on a 30-minute period of delays by sitting, standing about at the highway, doing whatever, and then deciding to go down to the party house. Yeah, it would make more sense. But to be honest, for Caden Pressey's timeline to be correct, roughly, and I'm talking very roughly, Renee Millan would have had to have got down to the highway at around 6 in the morning to spend 30 minutes at the highway to then make it down to the party house, which is like a 5-10 minute drive, to make it 6:30 a.m. So just a bit before 6 in the morning to get here, to park up, to spend 30 minutes dawdling about, to then get back in the car, spend 10 minutes to get down to the party house, to total 6:30, the timestamp, which Caden Pressey said. But if that is just before 6 in the morning for Renee to get here, then it kind of contradicts and goes against her saying that, oh, Jasmine called me at 5:45 to 6 in the morning, because by then she would have already been down here. So Jasmine Millan would have had to have called much earlier on. And if everything is pulled back, brought forwards, if that's what you'd call it, made earlier, Jasmine would have made a call earlier on, which then is much closer to the 5:15 timestamp of when Jack told everyone at the party that was still present there. So at 5:15, just so people have the memories rejogged, and to explain the situation with who was at the party house, at least by the time of Renee Millan's arrival, at least to what I can remember, Jack Newton making it back to the house to tell people about the news, heading straight back to the scene. Caden Pressey fumbling about looking for his shoe, to be later found on Noah's body, ends up just getting into the vehicle, his own, the red Cherokee, and he's driving it. And who are the passengers? Brylan Sweat, Mikey Lair, however you say the bloody name, Isaac Rojas, and I think I've said all those names now, and they made their way to the highway. As for all the girls, Logan, Avery, Carter, Jasmine, Stephanie were all left at the house crying in the kitchen, probably because they didn't want to go down and see what was happening because it was too upsetting. Anyway, the guys went on down to the highway, and this was before Renee Millan. At 5:21 is when Caden and the guys arrived at the scene. 10 minutes roughly they spent there, trying to process everything. Caden said Isaac was visibly upset, very emotional. Caden tried to put a towel or some kind of cloth over Noah's body for privacy, but wasn't able to because one of the two truck drivers told him off and said, "Get back from wherever you came from." And that's what Caden did. But Caden said that those two truck drivers were not Tyler or Tyler Hardy. They came afterwards, which is questionable, isn't it? Is it double vision or is it two separate pairs of drivers? Very coincidental if it is. But nevertheless, that's what we've heard, that's what we've been told by Caden, etc. At 5:30, the guys went back. Well, when I say guys, Caden, Brylan, Mikey, Isaac made it back to the party house when told to leave. Jack was given VIP access to remain on scene. Bit of favouritism, maybe. So, once making it back to the party house, Caden sat down on the sofa or couch watching TV. Girls still up and about, emotional. But Brylan, Isaac, Mikey all went to sleep like nothing happened. Which you could say is strange. Caden said it was strange and he was a witness. But maybe people react differently. Still, it's worth acknowledging because you never know. Why would you go to sleep? How can you go to sleep? Is it the right thing to do? In a way, yeah, but it's not exactly easy, especially when it's an emotional time. Nevertheless, probably would have been woken up anyway by the time Renee got down there. Now, yes, we've seen the alternatives given here. Renee states 7, Caden states 6:30. So let's just stick with 6:30. But this is the thing. Spending 30 minutes at least at the highway, and I'm going to acknowledge it now because I did in my failed recorded attempt yesterday, and it's very, very important to acknowledge it. Why was Renee Millan at the scene? Because she was concerned, worried. She wanted to learn the latest news and what's happened for that closure, so then she could go on down to the party house to let everyone know what's the deal, what's up, what's going on. And if that's near to 6 in the morning, well, probably before the police then arrived, but still 30 minutes spending there would have seen at least one of the undersheriffs, Jimmy Williams, arrive and Jack Newton. I don't know if Caleb was there at the same time when Renee was there, because of that gun situation of handing the firearms over afterwards, could Renee have collared Caleb at the time and said, right, I'm going to go down to the party house, I'm going to get the guns, I'm going to pass them on to you in the background later on. Could that have happened? And if not then, because Caleb wasn't there, maybe later when they were leaving the party house, because it would have had to have gone the same way they came down, you know, from where they live. More about that later. Make sure to stick about. But you know, bad news has come about. Your daughter's at the party. Daughters, Stephanie and Jasmine, worried, concerned. You need to seek comfort to make sure that they're okay. Rushing on down. Oh my God. Oh, but by the way, let me spend 30 minutes at the highway. I know my daughters aren't there and they're visibly upset and scared. Possibly they're at the party house. But I'm going to spend 30 minutes at the highway first of all, just to digest everything. And then I'll decide to go on down and see how my family, how my daughters are doing. So there is quite a delay, 30 minutes of doing what exactly? Standing about, talking to Jack. Jack's never mentioned it. Was there any interesting interactions between Renee Millan at the scene with any of the other key witnesses or truck drivers or anyone else in between? Makes you think. Now, take in mind, whilst we talked about the Caden Pressey situation with the truck drivers, by the time Renee Millan would have got down there, as long as it's after 5:43, let's just put it that way, Tyler and Tyler Hardy would have been present. So maybe she spoke to the truck drivers too. But we've not seen any mentions of that, or at least to my knowledge. So 30 minutes, what? Staring at the body, talking to people, getting the latest scoop, news, trying to understand what was going on. Was that then heavily influenced by her decision making once she made it to the party house? That let's go down to the highway, let's check the injuries, let's check the damage report, let's try and make sense of things. So then once I get down to the party house, I know what to clean up, I know what to move on, I know what to tell people. Just a theory, a concept, but it's worth taking into consideration. So once that was done, 30 minutes, as told by Caden Pressey, coming down here, right to the house, and then announcing one's presence. So what happened from here on then? Well, we just got a few little examples. Obviously, there was a bit of talk interaction where Caden was told by Renee what she was doing, highway, and what's going on now. Renee, from what Caden said, was announcing that, none of you should be here. You probably should get going soon or so before the police come and question you. Which is a big contradiction. It's kind of like saying, right, everyone who's here, you better leave now because the police are on their way. So get moving quick. But by the way, from what Renee says on Facebook is, I might as well remind y'all, is that the police are on the way down, so you're going to be the first ones to be questioned, so you might as well stick around and get out of the way. There's no point running, because they will catch you anyway, and if you do move, maybe they may think that's suspicious. So let's just stay put, let's stick together and make sure we're all okay. Yeah, major contradiction. From what Caden Pressey said was, Renee was kind of letting everyone know what was happening. So maybe by going down to the highway to announce, to look at what's going on, the police presence, the highway patrol presence, the undersheriff presence, whatever you want to call it, then coming down to the party house to say, right, police are already at the highway, you probably should get going before you're questioned, let's get moving. Interesting, but it contradicts what's said on Facebook by Renee's own statement. So there is conflict there between what Renee says and what Caden says as for the motive of do you stay or do you go. But anyway, whilst that was ongoing, it was Caden Pressey that said he came up with the idea to clean up the cans, the beer cans and all of that. Now, Renee Millan supposedly said that there is no point cleaning up because the police are already going to know it was a party. How? Because other people have said they were having a party? Because Jack Newton at the highway said they were already having a party earlier on, so the news has got about already? Or is it because of the digital footprint online, because of the social media videos and photos? It's obvious that they've had a party and that there is alcohol. There's no point hiding it. But was there any room for concern about the social hosting laws being broken? Was that ever acknowledged? Because whilst Renee Millan didn't state it herself with the statement what we saw today, it's been said a few times now online that Renee Millan kind of ordered Caden Pressey to take full responsibility of the beer cans and the cooler, alcohol, and take it back home with him or take it somewhere. Caden Pressey being underage at the time in terms of drinking, so if he was caught by police, he could get in trouble. So was that shifting the blame onto someone else, throwing them under the bus possibly? So then someone else gets the blame, so it bides other people more time? Kind of interesting, isn't it? That's one way of looking at it at least. But let's just say what Renee Millan is true. There's no point cleaning up because they're going to know it's a party. Oh, so what, take accountability as well with the social hosting laws being broken then? But then what about the firearms? Why do you take that upon yourself in terms of, right, we best collect the firearms, but as for the alcohol, I will just leave it put, even though it could get people in trouble. The firearms are more important. Is it because if the police did come on down and see a bunch of firearms present and a party and alcohol and social hosting laws being broken, then it would be a very messy situation for a range of people? I wonder. Was there any room for concern that the firearms could have been responsible? Well, in the eyes of Renee Millan, she was saying how, nope, there was never a reason for that or beyond. None of the firearms would have been responsible for Noah's death. But, no pun intended, the butt of a rifle could have been responsible for the shape of it based on the shape of the injury sustained to Noah's head and scalp as it was torn off. maybe it could have catched and chipped it, ripped it away. I'm not 100% confident in that, but there is a possibility. Blunt force injury, a firearm can do that. And you could say, well, normally when you kill someone, you'll actually use the firearm as it's intended by shooting. But take in mind, if there are witnesses present and you want to do it silent, the only other option is to club someone to death with it. Or a tool at least, with maybe some additional things along the way. That's based off the theory that Noah was killed, murdered. Right, I'm just being careful with my wording and language. But anyway, Renee Millan thought it was important enough to collect the guns up. But the reason why it's very strange is because, at least from what I can remember, the statement yesterday, what I read out in my video, Renee Millan said, yeah, as for the firearms, there were firearms in trucks by the people that said they were going to leave. Well, how else do you expect them to leave the bloody party? What's the point in getting access to these trucks in which you would need and require those people in possession of the trucks to be in possession of the keys in the same place at the same time where Renee Millan is, so then the keys can be exchanged to Renee so she can get into the people's trucks, get all the guns out, round them up, and then the party goers can get into their trucks without their guns, drive off home, and then Renee Millan goes back to these people and says, here's your gun, here's your gun. What's the point of that? It's like going up to someone's house as a mailman, collecting the mail that you just posted, taking it back to the sorting office and telling people, come on here and pick it up. You've just dropped it off. What was the point? Right? It's stupid. Now, there might be an exception. There could be a handful of people that were too drunk to drive back home themselves, so they got picked up and dropped off where they live. But they left their firearms inside their own vehicles parked up at the party house, or they left some of their firearms inside of the house and forgot to take them home with them. Now that's very irresponsible. How can people forget to bring their firearms back home? Because it's such an important item and it can be a dangerous item in the wrong hands. That's why people will have a safe, a storage unit to protect them, even in their own house. Let alone you take it to a stranger's place, because there were strangers at the party. How many firearms were at the party? Do we actually know? And how many people actually had their firearms locked in the truck? Because Renee Millan states that there were several, or a few at least. But where were those partygoers? Oh, they were leaving the party around the time of when Renee was there. So why would Renee need access to those firearms to return them back to the rightful owners when the owners are already at the party with their vehicle, with their keys, and they'll be taking it home anyway? Or is it because they were still drunk and they were leaving, but they needed to be dropped off? Well, we've not heard any other stories about taxi services. Supposedly there was only one designated driver at the party, known as Carter Combs. Why was Carter Combs not drinking? Is there a reason? Does she not drink alcohol? Consider it's the sister to Avery. You would have thought they'd been really partying up and drinking as much as possible. Very interesting. Was it pre-planned to have a designated driver in the first place? You think drink responsibly. Not everybody lives at the house. Not everybody can stay there. Some people need to make it back home and be places the following days, whether that be work, education, or anything else in between. There's a bit of planning that goes on in the background. But anyway, the planning and the distribution with the firearms, what, like a military operation? Renee rounds up all the firearms, 1, 2, 3, 4, up 2, and then collects them all, puts them where? In her own vehicle, to then meet up halfway with Caleb Newton to pass on the firearms, the arms dealer, and then take them back to the rightful owners. And you could say, well, Renee Millan mentioned nothing about Caleb Newton and the drop-off point. Well, this is the thing. One of the family members states that did happen, and we'll be looking at a screenshot of it later. So don't go anywhere. So, first of all, there was an importance for Renee Millan to supposedly spend 30 minutes, long enough at the highway to process everything, and then to make the decision to collect all the guns up from the party house. So what does that mean? Majority of the people at the party house left their guns behind or couldn't be bothered taking them back home with them? But why? They should be responsible. They're being reckless with those firearms. Why would you even bring them to a party in the first place if you weren't going to use them? See, this is what I mean. Is there an exaggeration when it comes to the amount of firearms? You say 30 to 40 people at the party. Now, what's the percentage of those partygoers all having firearms? Does that mean 30 out of the 40 people had firearms at the party? Was it a massive ammunition reserve full of guns and shit like that? Just sounds a bit stupid. Now, from what Caden Pressey said, Jack Newton, who does not live there, but is close enough because he's boyfriend-girlfriend with Carter Combs, able to sleep in the same room, so have VIP access to the house in a way, the option to actually stay there overnight as well and possibly live there if they really wanted to, but wasn't really the case to my knowledge. But anyway, Caden said Jack had an AR-15 assault rifle with a thermal scope. Sounds pretty high-end, to be honest. But Jack supposedly locked it in his own vehicle. Now, I don't know if it was Alicia Lee or someone else that said, yeah, but if you got Renee Millan present, then, she'll be getting access to Jack's gun, or how would she? And I'm thinking, well, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter because Jack would have been at the highway. He would have used his vehicle to get back and forth unless he had more than one vehicle at the party house. His own pickup truck and a side-by-side, unless he only had his side-by-side. Can anyone clear that up? I think someone in the background in the past said something about there was a trailer with a couple of them on it, maybe being pulled by a pickup truck, maybe Jack's. Who knows? Handful of vehicles, whatever. Anyway, if Jack is present either at the party house or at the highway at the time of all this going on, this specific event, Jack would have been in the presence of his own firearm, knows where it is, has it locked up, all under control, does not need to be moved or adjusted. So Renee would need not to fiddle with it. But at least how it was worded in the past, before I saw Renee Millan's old statement, is that, yes, she had firearms at the party, to what amount, unknown, but it was Jack specifically that locked his firearm in his own truck. Is it because he couldn't trust other people? He didn't want it being stolen? Because his rifle, his gun's more expensive or more important than everyone else's? Why lock it in a vehicle outside of the property, in a vehicle, in the dark, when anyone could drive on down, break into the vehicle, get a hold of the gun, storm the house and shoot people up? Everyone's different, but people tend to have their own firearms locked in a safe, under their bed, near to their pillow, or like a baseball bat, depending who you are and where you live and the restrictions and whether you're reckless or you're very safe or not. Now, if you're at a stranger's house or visiting someone you know, you might not have the same access to what you can do with your firearm, so you might lock it somewhere where you know it can be and it'll be safe. But normally you would like to be near to your gun at least, especially when you're going to sleep. You have it outside. Anyone could get a hold of it, could end up in the wrong hands. So to be leaving it outside and instead of inside, it just seems a bit weird. But what did other people do? Well, Renee Millan is stating that there was other partygoers that had them locked in the vehicles. Right, why were they all locked in the vehicles? Because people were ready to go home with them? Well, then there'd be no need for Renee to collect any of the firearms, unless it was just loose ones inside the house, which partygoers forgot to bring home, which is very reckless and a bit weird. But anyway, it's worth acknowledging, if there's no point moving beer cans because police know it's already a party, are you expecting the police to clear up all those beer cans and trash? Or is there another mindset behind it? There's no point clearing or cleaning anything up because we need to leave it as it is. You're going to be questioned anyway. Leave it natural in case the police want to investigate. Oh, but the firearms, yeah, they should remain as well. But actually, no, we're going to move them. Oh, so you're going to manipulate one thing from a potential scene but not the rest. Is that because there's a certain agenda behind it? Now, see, this is the thing. Renee Millan at the time could say, oh, people are making it as a big deal when it's really not that deep. But then why leave everything else as it is, but the firearms specifically need to be taken away when they should remain there when everything else is? There's no point adjusting anything if it's a place of interest and it might need to be investigated. Oh, because firearms are off the table as for Noah's death. How do you know for sure? How do you know for certain at the time? You never know. Oh, is it because you went down to the scene and you realised there was no bullet holes, there was no shooting or bullets, so that must mean that the guns are off the table so we can get rid of them quick? Yeah, but there are other ways to use firearms to kill people. Did you not think like that at the time? Or maybe they did and thought, you know what, probably best get rid of him. Very weird. So hopefully I've mentioned most of it up to now, because I'm trying to remember everything that I said from yesterday. Whoa, why did that zoom in? Weird. What other events took place though? Well, this is the thing. Renee Millan said that by the time she got there, at her time given, 7 in the morning, which is weird, that people were already cleaning up, more than one. But Caden Pressey said he was the one to clean up. He was the one to initiate their plan of cleaning up the alcohol to make it a bit cleaner, to help out, I guess. Maybe he wanted to do it as a distraction with what was going on. Now, what were the other people doing? Crying in the kitchen, sleeping? Surely they would have been woken up by Renee Millan's presence to let people know what's up and that people need to leave, or it's best for people to leave. But as for the ones that live there, you can stay there as you are. Interesting. Besides the cleaning up, Caden Pressey at some point did say he saw a wet patch on the front porch outside of the party house. What does that mean? What is that wet patch caused by? Well, based off the timing, the season, the temperatures, the humidity, is there a chance that it would have evaporated quickly or with time? So basically that wet patch must have been recent at the time of when all events were unfolding. A wet patch could be because someone's pissed themselves, could be water spillage, alcohol drinks spilled on the floor, could be a hose pipe. What would be significant about that if someone was hosed off? Like the theory concept, which people said earlier on Monday around the time of Noah's death, 3:30 onwards, when Noah was hosed off of any evidence or DNA. But if there was any blood, wouldn't that have washed off the porch, the steps, and trickled down and collected at a certain spot? And then it would have left a patch, a stain on the ground, and it would have been dirty. Or did people just completely spray it and clean it all? Well, Caden said he only saw a wet patch on the front porch, but it didn't really lead on anywhere else. Just a wet patch, just like a patch of blood on the highway next to Noah's body, but a gap in between with no splatters, no dribble marks, no sprays of blood. How weird. Kind of like similarities there in a way. Do I think Noah was hosed off outside on site of the property? I don't think so. I've not seen enough evidence of it. Is there an actual hose pipe, a reel that's within the party footage or photos, media, around the house or nearby on the front to suggest that they even own a hose pipe? Out of interest. There is still the shower situation inside, but would you actually drag a dead or half-dead body into your own house where there's all blood and DNA that could trickle all over the place? That would make it harder to explain and more time-consuming to clean up. I don't think they would go through that debacle. They'll just say, right, anything does happen on this property, get it away, move it to the highway. Bit of a rhyme there. Not intended. But anyway, let me know your thoughts. Any significance behind the wet patch? People can downplay it, but for someone like Caden to acknowledge it must be somewhat important enough to remember it, right? Would have been interesting to see if there was any more wet patches anywhere. With wet patches, there can be wet footprints. If there's any dribble marks where it trails to, that would have been good to know. Now, what happened after? Well, the next prominent timestamp was 7 in the morning, when it was time for them all to leave, except those that lived there. So the ones that remained there, supposedly, was Logan, Avery, Carter. How were they at that point onwards? Who knows? Well, they had from 5:15 to 7 in the morning to process it, to try and settle down, and with some other people present too, maybe it was a little bit better. But at 7 in the morning, Caden Pressey in his vehicle took Brylan Sweat, Mikey and Isaac back home. And I'm assuming at the same time supposedly, from what Caden said, Renee Millan left, taking Stephanie Millan, Jasmine Millan, the daughters, back home too, or wherever they live. Probably all in the same direction as well. With that being the case, if it is in the same direction, and it would be for Caden, because I do believe Caden said the journey back home, Caden dropped off the guys one by one from, was it like Ryan or Comanche, Duncan, areas like that. That's all ahead north. But it also means passing by the highway at 7 in the morning. I'm guessing you could still pass by at that time to make it back. But to pass by that highway at that time, was there anything different? Caden didn't mention anything. All he said was the drive back home was there was a bit of an atmosphere, a negative feel. Isaac was still upset. Mikey was going over it and over it in his head, speaking outwards. That might be because of the PTSD, could be a trigger, who knows. And Brylan, quiet. I'm guessing Brylan, Mikey and Isaac made it to the party by being picked up in the first place on the Sunday somehow, when being taken down to the house, just like Noah's situation. But at least they had the opportunity to get back home later by the likes of Caden Pressey. So it's worth taking that in mind. At least by 5:15, Caden Pressey was able to drive. I guess he sobered up, I'm guessing. But it was 10:30 Sunday night when Caden said he sobered up then. Maybe he felt like he sobered up, but not truly. It took hours later, going into Monday morning, for it to take full effect. Maybe. But it's unfortunate how in between that, Noah wanted a lift back. And people denied that because they didn't want to or they couldn't. Very unfortunate, isn't it? Anyway, whilst Caden was going past the scene of the highway at 7 in the morning onwards, and probably the same with Renee, did they stop by or did they just drive on by? Did Renee, by that time at 7 in the morning onwards, pass by Caleb Newton at the scene of the highway? I can't remember the time he arrived, but if that was the case, would there have been a drop-off in terms of weapons or whispering saying, I'll meet you elsewhere, I've got the guns in the car, we'll pass them on? Who knows? These are just ideas, questions, possibilities of you passing on by. And then after that, making their way home. And once Caden dropped the people off, Caden got back to his place of living where initially the mother and the father were, and had to explain it all, which was supposedly emotional and difficult to do. So you get the idea of all those events. But the theme of Renee Millan at the highway, then at the house, ordering people to leave, but at the same time saying you're going to be questioned anyway, saying don't move anything, there's no point, but we're going to take the firearms anyway. There are people in ownership of the guns who are ready to leave the house, but we're going to take the guns off those people and then return them to him later. Makes no sense, a bit weird. And anyone else in the background. That's pretty much it. But is to think how many firearms were actually at the party. We've heard it from what Caden said. Jack had an AR-15. Brylan had a hunting rifle, basically a sniper, probably bolt action with a scope. And Isaac Rojas had a 12-gauge shotgun. You saw that in the party footage on Sunday night. Now, out of all those firearms, how many were actually used? Couple maybe, when Caden said how Sunday afternoon or evening they went out shooting animals. Any of those firearms, were they used Friday, Saturday during the dove hunt? That's what I'd like to know. And out of the 30 to 40 people at the party, how many firearms were at the house or nearby? And then how many of them were from the dove hunt or used at the dove hunt? See? Very important, isn't it? But there was an importance with Renee Millan to get them away from the house, maybe before the police get there and question. So, by taking away the guns, you're reducing the focus there. And, Renee could say, well, keep the beer cans, alcohol present, the police are gonna know anyway. Either because the story, the words got out earlier from witnesses, or because it's been plastered all over social media online. But what about the firearms? Weren't they plastered online? Not really. So that might be the excuse. Well, the guns weren't shown online or no photos, so you can get away with taking them away. Because who's going to know that they were there in the first place? No one's going to know whether they were there or not, or taken away. But just so happened that Isaac was caught out holding a 12-gauge shotgun in the background footage on the front patio. So if police saw that, they would have seen clearly that there was at least a firearm at the party, and it's no longer there now, after Noah's death, which could lead to further questioning. It didn't, unfortunately, but still. One thing could have led to another chain reaction. Anyone else at the party with firearms anymore? And it could have gone further. So does that. Now, let's look at the exchange and why would Renee pass it on to Caleb Newton of all people? And how do we know it actually happened? Well, let's see from what one of the family members had to say about it. Here we are. So this was actually from the Reddit page. I'm guessing the main Noah Presgrove subreddit, as some of you will be familiar with already. We've visited it on a daily basis in some of my videos not long ago. But this is an old post. I know it says 2 minutes ago, but at the time of when the screenshot was taken by whoever, managed to get a hold of it. Now, I think I might have got the screenshot of it actually at the time, or someone else reposted it, and it was a part of a conversation and discussion. But let me tell you something, when I tried looking for that post, which involved some of the earlier photos, what we looked at today, from what Jade, the daughter, said, compared to what Renee states, the major time difference, that post may have been deleted from Reddit. But why? I don't know. A little bit weird. I mean, I tried searching for it. I mentioned key names and words, and that post did not show up. So it's a good thing I documented it and archived it at the time, and that's why we're here. Now, how sure can we be that this is Noah's aunt, known as Professional Feed? Well, if the real aunt wants to step up and confirm, feel free to do so in the comments section. Take in consideration when it comes to Reddit, it's vastly different to Facebook. With Facebook, you're forced to use either your own real name or a real name of another person. Facebook doesn't allow you to call yourself Magic Plum or Natural Grower 4567 Big Banana. You can't call yourself that. Or Bigger by the Day Bob. You can't call yourself that type of stuff. You got to use a proper name. For Reddit, it's more, there's more flow. And I think 99% of people have random Reddit names. You don't really see people's real names used. Whether that be for being anonymous or if it's Reddit policy, who knows? But you can have tag handles under your username on subreddit groups if it's allowed and what options are available. I remember on the Reddit page, you could have it as verified or unverified expert. There is a family tab as well. If you're a family member and you reach out to those on Reddit, the mods or admins, and there's confirmation in the background, then they will have their own title under their username so people are more familiar with these individuals. So it could quite possibly be Noah's aunt. But how many aunts did Noah have? If it's just one, going to be Robin Smith. If it's someone else, but then it's someone else, but still supposedly a family member. I just wanted to give like a heads up there in case people started attacking me, right? This is not an attack on the family, but let's just say if it's true that this is Noah's aunt, and if it's true that it's Robin Smith, let's just put it that way. Does that contradict what Robin and some were saying in the past about we're not on other pages, we're only on the Justice Run one, this is the place to be on Facebook, nowhere else? But maybe they were just talking about Facebook. Now, what does the Presgrove family think of the Reddit page? That would be interesting to know. We've seen the drama, we've seen the conflict in recent time. The Noah Presgrove army page, the informal one, has been under attack and has been tarnished by the odd individual here and there, and things have backfired in between, and there's from the justice page, and certain family members don't quite see eye to eye with those in the army page. It's a bit of a mess. And even the father of Noah urged people to leave the army page. But what about Reddit? You don't really get many cross-references about that. So is Noah's aunt still active on this Noah Presgrove Reddit page? Can anyone confirm? Anyway, let's just read what the supposed aunt had to say at the time. There's just a few little inconsistencies in this one in regards to a post, because this was a comment, a part of the post, that Caleb Newton did not remove the guns from the property, the party house. Another parent did, but no name mentioned. Yet, as we've seen, Caden Pressey confirmed it's Renee Millan. Renee Millan confirmed it herself. So I don't know why Noah's aunt didn't mention the name unless she didn't know at the time. But what's mentioned here is that Caleb Newton did not take the guns from the property. It was Renee Millan, another parent, the parent to Jasmine, Jade, Stephanie Millan, right? And that the other parent that did brought them, the guns, to Caleb Newton. But where? Where did that meeting spot happen? Did Renee Millan pick up the guns and then drive down the highway north, stop at the scene where Caleb might have been and said, here's the guns? Or later met up with Caleb at his place of living? And why did Caleb have to be the one to pass the guns on? Why couldn't Renee? If she was taking it upon herself to collect the guns in the first place, then why couldn't she hand them on to other people? Why did Caleb have to be the donkey to do the rest of the heavy work? You know what I'm saying? Weird, isn't it? You get the guns, you meet halfway with someone, you drop them off, they pick them up, and then they distribute them out. Sounds like bloody drug dealing. I'm not saying what's being done here is illegal, but you know, like drop-off points, meeting zones. At the time of Noah's death and a open, active, ongoing investigation, it just seems a bit weird. But then again, maybe Caleb's the best person to have guns passed on to him so he can distribute them out, spread them out. Just like how supposedly, as it's claimed online, that's what happened with the certain items of Noah. Oh, we'll just cut it up, we'll hand it out as a memento. Certain themes based off certain theories and claims. Noah's aunt does say that Noah's shoe was not a slip-on, it was a lace-up, the Adidas one. He actually drove home Sunday morning, took a shower, slept, and was picked up around 5 p.m. And his wallet has still not been found to our knowledge. He bought a new iPhone and his own phone plan that Friday, so if there was any money in it, it would have been minimal. Now, taking consideration about Noah driving home Sunday morning, that checks out with Caden Pressey, but as we've heard in more so recent time, it's been refined. That Noah didn't leave Saturday night, even though it was worded like that in the past. Noah stayed there overnight. So when Sunday morning came about and the regular friends all went out to Warwick gas station, from what Caden said, had breakfast, then Noah made his way back to his place of living. And he was able to because he had his own vehicle at the time. And I know some people say, well, Sunday onwards, Noah didn't have his vehicle. Yeah, once he got back to the party. Because Noah decided to be picked up from his place of living and dropped down at the party. 5 p.m. onwards. So that's interesting. Now, at the time of when Noah was picked up around 5 p.m. Sunday, was Noah made aware as to who would be attending that party, as in the strangers? You know, Noah had an opportunity, or people called upon Noah to come back to the party, and Noah made the choice to do so. People said that Noah was aware of what was going on and the dangers. Well, clearly not at the time on Sunday, at least. Because if you were aware, you wouldn't be going back, would you? And that argument Saturday, maybe it wasn't that bad for Noah to want to go back to the place where Jack is and where the argument started off at. Couldn't have been that bad. So, interesting. As for the wallet, yeah, still supposedly missing. As for the hat, supposedly missing. As for Kathy Bingham, gone very quiet since. So, make of that as you will. Let me know your thoughts. All in all, I'm okay with how this video turned out, considering what happened yesterday. Might have been the same length or so, but I hope you found it interesting and you enjoyed the video. Feel free to like and share the video so it gets more awareness and people can look into it. You could call this a timeline video, but also the theme and discussion of cleaning up, even though that didn't happen quite literally, but who knows? Yeah, we didn't touch upon the bleach and all of that, not too heavy, but still, just the act of moving one item is significant enough, especially firearms, right? Because there's social hosting laws of the broken, which involves alcohol, underage drinking, but also being in possession of a firearm as well. Well then, taking that away, you kind of reducing the severity of it and what you've broken, or at least trying to cover that up. In terms of the actual death of Noah, has what Renee supposedly done led to covering up Noah's death? It might have made the investigation a little bit harder when being able to try and track what was present at the time of when Noah was around or last seen, and the items possibly, because firearms could still have been used in some way besides being shot, right? And the interest of 30 minutes at the highway before getting down to the house, interesting. You know, you want to go to your family, go to your daughters as fast as possible to make sure they're okay. But you know what? Let's stop by. Let's spend 30 minutes staring at the scene instead. Maybe to get a good idea of what's happening, so then there's a better understanding of what to do next and maybe who to protect. Different ways of looking at it. So at the end of the day, what Renee Millan did, was it dodgy or not? Probably wasn't the best thing to do. Everything should have been left how it was, including the firearms. You might think it doesn't link because there's no visible bullet holes on Noah at the time, but still, you never know. And yet, Renee Millan took it upon herself that she knows or thinks best what's to do. Should have been left. And the whole timing of it all. Caden, 6:30. Renee, 7 in the morning. Jade, the daughter, left her house to get down to the party property at 9. It's happened again, hasn't it? Now, this can be considered old stuff, but it's not been created or done visually like this on my channel. I've done the timelines, as you've seen, but this is a focused one on a specific event. And it was possible because Caden provided a bit of a timeline. And it was somewhat consistent. It hasn't really changed since, but it was only recited once, to my knowledge, online. So you could say it's a bit limited. But anyway, feel free to share the video. Hopefully it gets more awareness. YouTube punished me 2 days ago because I uploaded 2 or 3 videos in one day. One video's got 1,000 views, the other one's got 800. I call that BS, to be honest, because it should have got out more, and they are important. But anyway, is what it is. I'll see you next time. I'm glad this video's out the way now, only because I dreaded having to repeat myself for another hour, considering what I did yesterday. But I think today it might have been a little bit better. I know some people say practice, perfect. You know, you got your script out. No, I like doing it just in one go, or as best as I can. No script for most part of it, and just a one and done video. It tends to have the best flow. But this was an exception because it was an important one that definitely needed to be done. So goodbye, good night for now.